Today on Adversity Strength, I'm joined by Deanna Steinle, an advocate of rare disease awareness whose life changed in her 30s after being diagnosed with generalised myasthenia gravis, or GMG. After more than a year of confusing and debilitating symptoms and a long search for answers, Deanna was finally diagnosed, a moment that could have defined her but didn't. Instead, she chose a different path, from continuing her passion for scuba diving to rediscovering creativity through painting and even returning to study biological anthropology. Diana's story is one of adapting, rebuilding, and refusing to be limited by a diagnosis. This is a conversation about living with uncertainty, navigating chronic illness, and what it really means to find strength when your life changes unexpectedly. Deanna, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's great to finally speak with yourself.
It's really great to be here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you so much. It's great to get to speak to yourself, because it's such an interesting story there as well. With what you were diagnosed with is something I've generally never ever heard of there as well. Take us back to the beginning. Where did your journey start with everything?
When I was diagnosed in my 30s, it was really an answer to prayer because my entire life I was an athlete. I was very adventurous, very active child. But there was multiple things that just did not make sense. And I would have injuries that wouldn't heal properly. I would have a surgery that really left post-care confusing to my doctors. And even though I was diagnosed in my 30s, when a crisis hit, and MGers have something called a crisis where our breathing is affected and we get into a potentially fatal situation. It happens, sometimes it can happen quickly, sometimes it can be a gradual decline, but that's when the doctors were able to actually find it. But once we found it, it answered questions that I've been having my entire life, answering questions I'd had my entire life. So you can actually put me into a juvenile category, but because I was actually officially diagnosed in my 30s, I'm still considered an adult diagnosed patient. So it really goes much longer than just the 1 year.
So what made you finally get diagnosed then? What happened for you to get to that stage?
Generalized myasthenia gravis is truly an invisible disease. So
Yeah.
it's not something that you can truly explain to someone until you start to have more outward showing symptoms. And a lot of those symptoms look like a stroke. So when I was going into crisis, it was droopy face, slurred speech, my eye was drooping, difficulty swallowing. And that happened so quickly that stroke protocol was initiated by the ER team.
Yeah.
Which is rightly so. That's the first line that they go for. Those symptoms, the ones that they were able to physically see on my face, is when they started looking for more answers. The muscle weakness, the fatigue, the vision part when you're an adolescent, your body is changing through all of those teenage years. It's this really, really funky, awful time for you, and you're just awkward in general. A lot of those answers were, we hate that she's going through this, but she will probably grow out of it. So there's a lot of those conversations happening when you're younger. When you get to the symptoms that I'm talking about during crisis, where doctors are like, this is completely abnormal. Stroke symptoms, droopy face, not able to speak properly. Those are the ones that really get attention. When that happens, they're able to say, okay, when all the other things are negative, what else is there that presents symptoms in that way? Myasthenia gravis does that.
Process of elimination then.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking? How old are you when you first had like what you thought was like a stroke then?
It was the 30s. So nothing happened to my face until
Right.
that moment.
And how old were
It
you
was never into my jaw and my face until that moment.
when that first happened?
Literally, I had my 30th birthday in March and it happened in April.
Lots of
Yeah,
time.
so I was working at a medical practice at the time, and thankfully I was. And I was sitting at my desk, I was the practice manager, and the one of the providers came up to me and said, "Do you know who," because he's Canadian.
Yeah.
He's like, "Who's the vice president again?" And I was like, "Why?" We always had this banter back and forth about America and Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
And I answered the question and he went away. And then he came back and he said, "Do you know where these line items are?" And he started quizzing me on very bizarre questions. And I had no idea at that point that my eye was starting to go. So he was quizzing me for stroke protocol because he was noticing those facial differences. And then he asked me if my head hurt. He asked me if my eyes hurt. And then finally he said, "I'm not trying to scare you, but your face is drooping and I need you to get to the hospital."
Yeah.
So I was very, very blessed to be in that environment and someone that didn't scare me. And they were able to ask me those questions in that And there was no one around at the time, so it didn't feel off. It didn't feel weird. And I didn't have that scare until he told me that you need to go look in the mirror. This is happening. We need to get you to the hospital.
What's going through your mind when he's asking these questions and he's saying that to you? Because it must be like panic setting in.
Well, the vice president part wasn't as uncommon because, like I said, we had a great relationship
Yeah,
and we laughed constantly about the differences. So it was, and it was an election year. So it wasn't, what he was asking wasn't out of the blue.
yeah,
But when he started asking questions that I knew that he knew the answer to, every time he walked away, I was like, what's going on? Something feels off. And then it hit when he came back and said, you need to go look in the mirror. We've got something serious going on.
and then straight to the what would have been like the emergency room then.
Yes, so actually I went straight to my normal doctor, which I
Right.
probably shouldn't have done, but I did. I called him immediately because he knows that if I call, it's urgent. And that comfort zone of him being through
Yeah,
that journey of unanswered questions all my life, it was a safe space.
yeah.
And I knew that if he told me
You'll
to go,
go.
I'm
Yeah,
going. It wasn't, like I said, it probably wasn't the smartest thing to have that delay, just because in a stroke situation, you have minutes to get what you need.
yeah,
I mean, that's reality. I should have gone immediately to the ER, but because he'd asked me about head pain and other things with my vision, and at that point, those were negative. I was like, that's not happening. I don't feel that. He's like, okay. So I told him I was going to my doctor and I drove straight into the building. I mean, I went straight into his office. As I was driving, my vision split completely to two separate images, and it's called vertical diplopia. So I saw two cars literally sitting on top of each other,
oh
and I
God.
pulled over on the side of the road and my husband came to get me. At that point, that's when the true fear set in, because the droopiness felt more of like a fatigue symptom.
Right.
It wasn't as substantial. It grew to be more substantial, but at that moment, it didn't feel as off as I was thinking it should feel. The minute the vision split, someone that's had perfect vision her whole life, that's when the terror set in. That was when I like knew we are in a very serious situation.
Yeah, anything with your vision. You then got through to like the what would be the emergency room and your doctors following you as well.
Yes.
Husband.
So, and that was what's
Yeah,
nice about our system, is that everything, he had all the rights to be there and help guide and do all
yeah,
those things. Ruled out, once we got the stroke ruled out, we were looking at other things like MS. We were looking at brain tumors. We were looking at anything that's going to impact that visual field.
yeah,
And the reason that MG affects your vision is because it's your most used voluntary muscle. And MG affects every single voluntary muscle in your body. So anything that you can tell to move, anything that you say to from your mind to that muscle, I need you to move. Most of the time, a lot of your muscles are in a relaxed state, but your eyes, as long as you're awake, are in a constant state of contraction. So that is why vision is very prominent with MG patients having the visual issues.
that makes sense. They're testing you for like stroke and other things there, and they're not coming back with anything. When did they come back with what it actually is?
I never thought that I would be so thankful for snow in my life, but
Okay.
on that day, it snowed and everyone canceled their appointments. So I
Oh,
saw 6 specialists in a day.
specialist in a day. That's pretty good.
We ate in my car with my husband. We
Yeah,
went from parking lot to parking lot trying to get answers. Once everything kept coming back normal, because my vision was so off, the doctor was like, okay, the chaos has kind of calmed down. We don't feel like you're in danger at this point. We still don't know what's happening, but all of the big names are off the table of diagnosis. Those are negative. We need to get you to see. We need you to get to be able to see one clear image. I said, that would be great, because when your vision's affected, you get nauseous. There's other, it affects you greatly. So I was sent to a neuro-ophthalmologist, and he walked in, asked me again about aneurysm history and
yeah.
in my family history, asked me all the tests I'd had done. And he walks out and he comes back in and he goes, I don't want to ask you this, but I need you to put an ice pack on your eye. And I'm thinking, I have spent tens of thousands of dollars on testing. And this guy is asking me to put 5 cents of ice on my eye. I laughed at that point. And
Right.
I thought he was doing it for comfort. because that fatigue of trying to hold your eyes open,
Yeah.
it can cause some pain and discomfort. Put it on for 3 minutes, and my eyelid went back into contraction and opened right up. And I thought, this is some bizarre magic trick. This is unreal. And he said, you're positive for generalized myasthenia gravis. You need to get to the lab immediately and have blood work. And I'm calling the neurologist, my friend, on my cell phone, and he will be waiting for you in an hour because you're probably going to the hospital. Everything changed in that moment. It went so fast. He knew enough about it to know that if I was in this state, that crisis was coming. The
Right.
breathing, all of these things was coming, and I needed immediate help. So he, after all the doctors I'd been through, was the one that ordered the blood test, and I became positive for the antibody that about 75-80% of MG patients have. There is a select group that is not positive in their blood work that is an MG patient, but that's another story for another day. But I was blessed because I had the positive blood work, I was able to get treatment immediately.
Right. So you've seen what, 5 or 6 different specialists, and what, as always, he's the last one you go to,
Just
right?
because I needed glasses to get to be able to see an image.
So what's going through your mind when you're going from specialist to specialist, and they're going, yeah, you're all fine. You're like, well, obviously I'm not, and you have to keep going to specialist. What are you thinking at the time? Are you thinking, just tell me what's wrong, or you just focus on getting to the next specialist?
I think I've been cursed with the science brain. So a lot of fear set in
Yeah,
of I know there's a lot more bad things out there.
yeah,
And because everything was negative and kept coming back negative and kept coming back
yeah,
negative, I thought, okay, obviously there is something very serious wrong. And if that is the case, can I get help? Where am I going to have to go to get help? And unfortunately, I was like, can I even afford to get help? And we sat in my car with my husband in between those appointments, and we did talk about that because I thought this is going to be, I felt self-imposed guilt of it was going to affect my family financially and it was going to be my fault. And even though I had an answer at that point, all I saw was the dollar signs of what it was going to take to help me.
yeah, yeah. And because obviously it's different in the UK to we got like the NHS. It might be terrible, but for a lot of people, obviously you pay into it and it's free there. Whereas you guys, you're relying on your health insurance, that kind of thing.
Right. So those were happening early on. That was a big conversation the day I was diagnosed was if it's rare, you got to see a specialist. That costs a
Right.
lot of money.
So when they say that it's a race against time, it's
Mhm.
almost like there's a clock ticking down. What is the actual race against time? What are you racing against that you need to get to hospital for tests?
Because I was having those symptoms suddenly and those symptoms were progressing, the doctors were like, okay, we need to make sure that your diaphragm, people don't know that your diaphragm is a voluntary muscle. Your lungs are involuntary, but your diaphragm is voluntary.
Okay.
So, because you're pushing, you're projecting, you can tell yourself to project like a singer.
Yeah.
So again, you're telling from your mind to your diaphragm to project. Because of those symptoms rapidly progressing, my doctors knew that we were headed towards that respiratory failure.
Respiratory
And
failure. So this could kill you.
yes, and I have almost died from it about 5 times. So it's been understanding that key component of how to get help, when to get help is very nerve-wracking because you don't know, you have to really know your body. Sometimes you just have to second guess yourself. When in that day, by the time I got diagnosed and they kept checking my breathing, the neurologist that thankfully I still have him to this day, got me into the hospital, got an emergency infusion that is pretty typical for first line of defense for crisis. And the minute the medicine started working and my vision, I took my glasses off, my vision went straight again. I had just these tears of relief and fear because nothing that I do in my daily life could prevent what just happened. Nothing, I can't do anything to prevent that crisis from happening. And I still can't, even with treatment. You have called breakthrough crisis. And that has happened. That's been my reality. That has happened several times.
So I'll come to that in a sec because it's fascinating that what you've gone through. It just listening to it feels so overwhelming. And then there's your poor husband there that's like, what can I do, kind of thing. And there's nothing he can do. We just need to do this. We need to get you there. When they come back to you, when did did they officially diagnose you with
The
when you
date
had
is actually April 19th. It's getting ready to be my anniversary date in just a few days. That's when the blood work came back positive, because that blood work actually takes a little bit of time to come back. It's not something that just instantly,
right?
it's not a normal blood draw for like a CBC or a red blood count, white blood count. It takes a minute for it to come back. And I cried because I had relief. I had an answer. And in that moment, I looked at him. I said, "This is the day I get true help." Years of unanswered questions and not knowing. It was like, wow, now we get to actually get help.
You should do something. So you're being diagnosed with something that it sounds pretty rare, 'cause I've never heard of it. Is it how rare is that?
It is. The statistics are changing because of awareness, we are
Yeah,
starting to see more doctors testing for it, more diagnosis coming out. But we're a very rare group. And because there's two categories between just affecting your eyes or your complete body, and then you have the group that is antibody negative, that their blood work doesn't show it, all of those numbers are just constantly shifting. So, but we are under we're called the zebras. When you're rare, you're a zebra.
right.
So you have stripes, everybody shows your stripes. And there's a big campaign for Rare Disease Month and all of that. It's an honor to be a part of that community because it's
Yeah,
a part of a community that has so much empathy and respect for
yeah,
each other
yeah.
that you can have conversations without a lot of explaining. And it's just a relief to have that support.
Yeah. So it sounds crazy, but it's also yeah, it makes sense that you're actually finally relieved to be diagnosed with a rare, is it an illness, a disease? What's it
Disease.
classed
So
as? Disease.
it would be a disease, yes.
What was it, an autoimmune disease?
It is, yes.
Tell us a little bit about it, because, like I said, a lot of people would never have heard of it. So, what is it? How'd you get it? Is it just one of those genetics, or what is it?
We get to be again the rare little group that they
Right.
don't know. There's
Don't know.
no right now currently in research, it's not a genetic pass down. It's not something I did or acquired or whatever the reason. I just have it. And that's the part of my puzzle that again, having the science brain that I do, it's like I want the why. And it's
Yeah.
just not, we're just not there yet. But we've come so far in the last 10 years. I love the fact that I get to see all the research and the new treatments
Yeah.
that are coming out, because before it was more of an umbrella treatments for that you could use for like other
Yeah.
conditions. And now we are actually having to start to see targeted treatments that are just, they're changing some people's lives. And I'm really grateful for that.
If is there like have you got like an idea? Is there like an idea at the moment? We can't say, but we think there's a likelihood it comes from this and this, or
Not that I'm aware of. And unfortunately, I didn't get to go to the national conferences this year. We've had I've thankfully I've been speaking a lot and touring a lot. So yeah, my advocacy schedule has been a little bit crazy. But those are the conversations that when you are in those conferences, you have more of those conversations. And I always get summaries from conferences. So, this year there's several going on that when I get the summaries, I'll read them and see if they've come up with the why yet.
yeah, it sounds like you're on top of it. If there's anything new coming out, you're going to be there and knowing straight away.
Yes, and that's a huge, I think I'm so blessed to have the industry partner relationships that I do have, because I sign up for all the newsletters from them, all each and every single one of them. I get the push emails of like, this is what's coming up, this is the research that's going on, and I just feel so blessed that because any patient can sign up for those, but just being in this space and being able to ask questions and say, hey, like, what's new? What's going on? What do we found? And again, from the science part of my brain, it just fascinates me. And it's one of my coping strategies as well,
Yeah.
because it allows me to see things differently.
Because that's my next question is what made you decide to get involved in it, be an advocate for it? Obviously, when you're into science, that's going to be a big percentage. But what other reasons was it? Just because like I've got no idea, and there's other people out there, and if I can be at promote or be an advocate for it, other people's going to get some awareness of it. What did you?
I think it really came to light when we did the film with the Rare Connections film that just came out. It was three patients, and each patient had, so one person had a spouse, one person had a parent, and then one person had a friend, and my friend was the one in it. That film is not about telling a patient that's watching it to fix something. It's
Mhm.
not telling a patient that there's a cure, because there's not. It's not telling anybody that they have to do XYZ. It's about being seen and being heard. And that person that feels completely isolated, sitting at home on a couch, sees that and say, there's somebody like me that
Yeah.
gets me.
Yeah.
They're not trying to tell me what to do or how to fix it. It's a safe space for people to understand they're not alone, even though they're rare. And that kind of advocacy, that kind of message is what I love. Yes, there's all kinds of noise about research and treatments and all of this going on, but you got to think about the person that has no support. And can
Yeah.
I get a message out there to where they feel loved and seen?
Yeah. I totally understand that. As a therapist, the amount of clients I've had that's come to me, and they're almost in floods of tears. Often they are, because there's somebody that's listening to them, and there's somebody that actually understands them. And it's not about solving a problem. It's not about let's try and fix this. I just want that person to listen to me, and there's somebody there that understands what I'm going through, especially with yourself and people that's going through the same as you. Because even when we know millions of people going through the same thing as what we're going through, we always just think it's us. But when it's like yourself, where it's something that's very rare, I think almost everyone that's probably got the same disease will almost think it's just me on my own in the world. So when there's other people going, well, here's a group, yeah, you're not on your own, and I understand the difference that can make to somebody's mental health.
Absolutely. And that is such a key component to the rare disease community as a whole, not just with the MG community. We have that string of things that connect us, even though our conditions are different. And even within our own community, we are actually called the snowflake disease because how we respond to treatment, how our symptoms present, no two people are the same. It's very difficult to find a plan of care that works for one person. It takes time, it takes trial and error, and it's ongoing. That trial and error, it doesn't stop. It just keeps going. You cannot overlook the mental health aspect of that because you can lose yourself in the grief, and you have to have the support and understand that there are people out there that can help.
How did you manage to overcome probably so many overwhelming feelings and emotions? It must have been very up and down for you that you finally, after years of all these unanswered questions, you then officially get diagnosed with something, and yet it's something that nobody really knows a lot about. So you're almost gone from there to there, slightly better, but then there's still a lot of confusing things of how am I meant to feel now, because I don't know what the outcome is there. I don't know how it's the answers to it. And you especially with your background, you're somebody that searches for the answers. And then you said earlier that even with medication, you still it's not like a cure to it. It helps, but you can still have a lot of, what would it be called as like side effects, or what would it be called?
If you think of our symptoms, it's kind of like a pendulum. It swings back and forth. It
Right.
fluctuates day to day, hour by hour. I don't have 2 days that are the same.
What
One
would
day
be?
I could be
Yeah.
scuba diving at Disney World, and then the next day I'm in my wheelchair because
You
I've
know,
overdone it.
that extreme.
It's that extreme. It can be that extreme.
Okay, so scuba diving, and then is it something like if you go scuba diving today, tomorrow you could pay the price, or is it just one of those things?
For me, and I want to be very, very clear on that, for me, I have to prep before something, do the event, and then plan for recovery, for the recovery after. And when I talk about diving, I only dive in disability certified aquariums. I no longer am allowed to go out in the ocean, which is completely fine with me. I've
Yeah.
done it before diagnosis, but that is a safe environment for me to still have my passion fulfilled and in a very safe spot. And they all understand my condition. I have done a lot of training with them on my condition. I was a professional diver before, so I know when not to dive because there's always another day. You never push yourself to do something unsafe.
When would you know it's not the right day to go? You're about to like go in, you're all ready to go, and you're like, yeah, I don't. Yes, this isn't right. How would you know that?
When I wake up and there's certain things that I do to
Yeah.
help with symptoms throughout my day, if those things are not responding to the help, then I know that the dive won't happen. That we're just going to call it and say, no, this is not the day.
So, what about sort of like long-term planning for things? Is it sort of day by day, or do you know that actually, yeah, we can book this trip or whatever it might be? That'd be fine. Or
I'm a big advocate of a toolbox,
yeah,
and I've Over the years, I've built my toolbox to allow me to plan now for future events. But even up to the day, there could still be something that happens and I have to either reschedule or move it or adjust. And I had to come at peace with that, with saying, yes, you had to reschedule, but rescheduling gave me my future back. Because if I do something to push myself beyond those safe limits, there isn't the next day. It could
No?
really be that detrimental for my disease state.
So if you push it too far, it could irreversible, or it could kill you.
Yeah, the part of the fatality puzzle comes all around your diaphragm. That piece is so critical. Some people do not have that piece to their puzzle. Like I said, we're all different. For me, that is a big piece of my puzzle. So regulating, adjusting, making those adjustments is so critical for me to continue doing my adventures.
How did you deal with it mentally? As a therapist, it's always on my mind.
Sure.
How was their mental health?
It's cyclical, and I will tell everybody that that is absolutely okay as long as you have the support.
Yeah. What about
I totally believe you have to give yourself space to let those feelings process, because if you hold it or you deny that those feelings are there and you suppress it, it
yeah.
will keep building and gradually build to a place that is unsafe.
Yeah, it's just like that. Just for like normal sort of mental health, if you like try and like suppress it, that it's always going to come at a cost. And what about your husband? Obviously, your husband knew something wasn't wrong for years, but then to find out, and he's probably like, "What is this?" And then suddenly you're like, "Yeah, this is how I'm going to have to manage this." So how does he deal with it? Because us guys want to like fix things and make sure that you're all right, and then he can't. So yeah, how does he deal
Sure.
with that?
We actually do a marriage talk in a lot of spaces, and you'll
Okay.
be surprised. The very first question they're anonymous questions. We put cards on the middle of the table, and it never fails anytime we do a talk together is, why has he not left you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why has he not left you? It's
Yes.
kind of a question that you might think but not ask. I mean, I wonder why they're anonymous.
It's anonymous, so they have that safe spot to ask that question, and they're asking because if you do not have certain foundations within that marriage,
Yeah,
you are going to start to feel that pressure. You're going to start to feel the breakdown, the disconnect,
yeah,
because chronic illness really impacts family units. I am so blessed and thankful that our marriage is based on communication. That is the number one pillar that my husband and I, that I'm so proud of.
definitely.
And it is communication with how I feel. It's communication in intimacy. It's communication in fear. It's communication in financial struggles. And he gives me that space to voice whatever I need to voice. And we
Hmm.
just have to work through it. There is no holding back.
Yeah,
It has to be brought to the front. And he also has to
yeah,
communicate with me
yeah,
because he's seen it and living it, but a completely different perspective than what I am.
yeah. And for us guys, the easiest thing to do is just keep quiet and not say it and sit on it there. And so, how did you? I'm kind of guessing your communication was pretty good, but you probably had to take it to another level.
Sure, absolutely.
How did you do
Absolutely.
that point?
So I have a medical service dog now. She just
Yeah.
turned 7.
Okay.
She actually, I don't want to say the word fixed, but she aided in our communication. Before her, he had almost watched me lose my battle 4 or 5 times. So if I got up to go to get a drink of water, or I got up to go to the restroom, or I got up, he'd say, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And it sounded like a parrot. It's like, if you keep asking me if I'm okay one more time
Yeah.
when I'm going to get a drink of water, I'm
Yeah.
going to lose it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my service dog, after we got into a good routine of having her in our lives, he could look at her and not have to ask me that question. He knows by looking at her that if I need to do something, if I need to adjust, if I need medication, yes, he asks me how I am all the time, but it's on a very different level than what it used to be before her. So
So
she truly aided in that communication process that we needed help in, because his feelings were valid. His feelings
yeah.
were absolutely justified because he lived it with me. No one else, no family member, no friends. He has seen every moment that I've almost died in person.
Yeah. I'll be
His
honest.
feelings are absolutely valid.
I think if I was sat in his position, I would have been doing the same. Every time you go, I'll be asking, "You're right, you're right, you're right," until you got really annoyed very quickly.
Yeah, and I'm like, please stop asking me. But she
Yeah.
did. And I And I'm so thankful that that was an opportunity for me and that
Yeah.
it worked for me.
So tell us about a service dog. I mean, you see
Mhm.
like the dogs that help, for blind people, but and
Mhm.
I think I've heard of a service dog, but I couldn't tell you what they actually do. What do service dogs
Absolutely.
actually do? How did you get one? Who come up with you could get a service dog?
Sure. We had one of those near-death experiences, and I had tried a couple of first lines of defenses treatments, and my doctor was like, if something doesn't change, you're not going to be here. If your body doesn't start to turn around, you have a very limited time here. And I made some phone calls to people that I knew personally that had service dogs and had a friend with another rare condition. And she actually was a breeder, and that's another story. But she worked specifically with rare conditions. And I want to back up here. Service dogs for mobility with MG patients has been around for a very long time.
Yeah,
So helping them get up, go to a different room, picking things up off the floor, helping them take their socks off,
yeah,
retrieval commands, those kinds of things have been around for assisting MG patients for a very long time. Because the science in my background, I had a really hard time juggling my daily medication. And I asked my friend, I said, is it possible just to try? Can we try to see if we can get a dog to help me regulate the medication aspect of this? Because if you take too much of this one thing, it's bad. If you take too little, it's bad. And it's just, I need help managing that. So that process started because of the near fatal situation. We needed another part of my plan of care adjusted. And for me, it worked. Again, I can't echo this enough. For me, it worked in a scent capacity. There's an umbrella for service dogs. You have guide dogs that help people that are blind. You have hearing dogs that help people that are deaf. You have scent dogs that help with, most familiar with diabetics, seizures, that category. And then you also have mobility dogs, where dogs assist with people with limited mobility issues in doing certain tasking either at home or even out and about in public.
yeah,
It's really the four categories that you run into. And then some dogs can be cross trained. So my dog does mobility and medication for scent. And those two things changed my life. Absolutely, hands down, changed my life.
it must be like having a new best friend.
She just turned 7, which is categorized as a senior. And
Oh no.
I look at her and I'm like, oh man, this is not where my heart can handle this right now.
Yeah.
She's working great, and I'm very, very thankful for her.
How do you manage on like a daily basis? It sounds like you deal with it really well, and you've got things in order as best as you can there. But as a therapist, it's what you have to overcome, deal with, get through. It sounds mentally exhausting. How do you deal with everyday life? Because it's never a straight line. It's always up and down.
Lee, I'm going to be
Go
so
for it.
honest right now. At 11 o'clock today, I got a phone call about
Yeah.
some things that were going on. And I have been very sick this past week. I got the
Yeah.
respiratory junk crud.
Yeah.
And then something else had happened. And at 11 o'clock, I got this phone call and talking through a situation. And I knew that we had this podcast today.
Yeah.
And I sat in the middle of my living room floor, bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
I had a complete breakdown, snot going everywhere, just tears. My husband came home for lunch because, 11:30, he had a break, so he came. I said, I need
Yeah.
you to help me get grounded. I need you to get me back in my headspace where I can do this interview. So we have a couple of things in place that kind of help me get back into that healthy mental spot. But he sat with me on the floor, bawling my eyes out, and I said, I gotta give it its release. It's gotta be released. I've got to let it have its time. And I thought, how can I go from that to
Hmm.
being my professional self to do this podcast?
I think probably because you're so professional.
It is, but I want people to know.
Yeah.
I want people to know that it does not matter how professional you are. It does not matter what you're going through.
Mhm.
And you can have everything right that looks right online.
Yeah.
These moments are real
Yeah.
and they happen all the time. And there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
There's nothing wrong with it. So I did my makeup, I washed my face, I got ready, and I did those steps to make me feel like I was in control because so much about my illness I have zero control over. And if I could do these things, if I could get self up, have that release, put on my makeup, put on my armor,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, yeah,
and understand that my brain, my experience, I have worked so hard to get to this point of where I'm at.
yeah. And you can see that, you can tell.
If it reaches one person and it saves them, not because of the medication, not because of getting to the right doctor, but they're sitting at home alone and they are on the border of mental health
Yeah,
crisis,
yeah,
then it's worth it.
yeah,
Every tear is worth it.
yeah. Yeah, and it's the whole point of doing a mental health podcast. Because I actually had clients that I said, like, I'm going to do a mental health podcast. What would be a really good mental health podcast that you would listen to? Because a lot of them are quite dry, two therapists talking, even a therapist, I don't really care. And some are very good. But all my clients at the time, they all said they want to listen to somebody that's been through adversity, that they can relate to, even if it's completely different to what they've ever been through, and they then want to feel inspired. So, you coming on here is like the most perfect fit and guest for the podcast there as well. And you'd be amazed at the people that listen to the podcast, that out of nowhere you get, whether it's like myself or the actual guest, to go, you've inspired me. Usually it's the guest, not me, but they go, I listen to your story and it relates to me, whether it's they've been through the same thing or it's something similar there as well. So I think what you're doing is just phenomenal, and the strength that you show and the courage that you show to do this as well, and
Thank
to think that, because a lot of you just everyday life, you've all got things going on, and somebody gets on the podcast. I've just finished work, it's a long day with clients, and I'm like, it's been a long day, but I'm looking for a podcast. And you're never thinking, what has that person just been through in order to get themselves ready to come onto the podcast? I take it as such a compliment for you to go through all of that and to come on the podcast and spend time talking to me. I think
you.
it's
Oh,
just
thank you.
fantastic. No, thank you.
I think also there's a real beauty in the human connection.
Yeah,
And when I do speak, and the reason I speak and the reason I advocate on the level that I do is not only for awareness, but every time I get off the stage, every time that I have a consultation with an industry partner on a big project or whatever it is in those capacities, there's a part of me that heals every single time. And that is a therapy for me. There's something beautiful and magical about having that space, and that's what I need. My person, my heart, my brain, my soul, when I have those conversations on that level, and I speak my truth and I speak about their lived experiences and I get it out there and I let people know, when I say cyclical emotions, I mean it. I mean it. And that it's okay. Every time I say it out loud, it is such a healing moment for me. And when I get off, even though that hour that I had right
yeah,
before I came on here, the rest of my day is going to be so awesome
yeah,
because I had this moment to be able to do what I love, communicate what's going on, let people know the honest, raw truth about the day,
yeah.
and we can move forward.
I think one of the things that really stands out, one is your bravery, and also your honesty there as well, is that when a lot of people are doing interviews, you see it all the time where I went through this, but now life's all good. Okay, great, all the best. But it really stands out more so when somebody is being interviewed, podcast, wherever it might be, and then they're saying, yeah, I'm struggling, I'm really going through this. I have to deal with this every single day. You've come on there and done a podcast interview, but you know what it took for me to come on there? That for
Mhm.
me just shows so much strength, and that's really impressive.
Thank you. And and I needed that. And I needed and I needed that reassurance. And I think communication again is such a huge part, whether it's your spouse, your family members, your providers, getting that feedback of hearing it instead of people just assuming that
Yeah,
assuming that you feel that way about yourself. Not that we need the extra fist bump or the pat on the back, but when you have your inner circle
yeah,
recognize that, there's another powerful building block into what gets you through that next day. And my husband knows that. We talk about that, we communicate that. And like, I'm having a bad day. I need to hear something that I've done well,
yeah,
that I've done okay.
yeah,
Even if it was like you liked my dinner, if you liked what I cooked, it's great. Just a little something, because there's so much of our day that is unpredictable. Again, has no control over, and just having that constant communication is just so powerful. And I know I've echoed this so many times,
yeah.
but I think it really changes people's lives when it's done correctly.
Yeah, communication's everything. And for you guys, you have to be absolutely on top of it all the time.
And it's not perfect. You have to learn it. You
Oh,
have to work on it. It's a skill you have to build and understand. And also, there's a lot of grace. You have to give grace to each other.
yeah, yeah. And you could say the same thing just for a normal couple in a relationship without going through
Absolutely.
what you're going through. You must have had people come up to you after you've given a talk and say, "Do you know what, this has really affected me. I've listened to what you said. I'm going through this, I'm going through that." You must have had that.
I do. And I am very, very cognitive of expressing that. I'm grateful that you've had this moment that relates to you, or even an epiphany moment or something. And I always encourage people to say, if this is how you feel and you need to navigate that, please make sure that you get into a professional setting of someone that is licensed and truly can be there to help you go through that journey, because friends and family are absolutely great. But we're talking about life-changing illnesses, true types of grief, loss of identity,
Yeah,
sometimes even loss of partners or spouses because of that situation. Like I spoke about before, you have to know that there are resources out there for all different types of subcategories and find the right space for you.
yeah. I think to have the right people around you obviously makes all of the difference there, and it's certainly something to get as much support as you possibly can, without doubt. What's the future? I know you take things day by day, but what's the future looking like? What have you got in mind for the future? Because I can imagine you want to do as much as you can to raise awareness for this.
Absolutely. The neat thing about advocacy, because research changes and projects changes, is that it's ever shifting. And I just want to continue to be a part of the conversation. That is the goal.
Yeah,
And whatever that looks like, whatever that builds into, I'm eternally grateful that I was a part of that journey. Because again, if those raw, true lived experiences are expressed in the right spaces, the science changes, the
yeah,
conversation changes, and we're making something shift, and it's going to affect people in the long term.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that's great. And the fact that you're doing podcast interviews as well, you're doing everything you can to raise awareness is brilliant. It's been an absolute honor as well as a pleasure talking with you, Diana. And I think you're absolutely amazing. I wish I could have 1% of the strength that you've got. And I wish you the best with every single thing that you're doing. You've done amazing. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today after having such a difficult day and overcoming that to come on there and take time out to speak myself. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. And I do want to say that everyone, my platform is Resilience is Beautiful. And
Yeah,
the reason that it is because what your advocacy looks like, what your strength looks like, all of that is uniquely beautiful to that person.
yeah,
And it does not matter if your goal for the day is just to take a shower. It doesn't matter if your goal for the day is to go out to eat. It doesn't matter what those goals look like. Every single goal is important because it's
yeah,
important to that person. And the strength that it takes to do that should be applauded. It
yeah,
doesn't matter if you're trying to get a shower or you're getting up on a stage. The strength that those individuals in the chronic illness community show should be applauded on every single level. Just because I'm doing this doesn't mean it's more important
yeah.
than the person that's advocating just to their doctor and having that private one-on-one conversation. It is something that should be truly amplified and applauded, that they're able to even get through that day. And I want them to celebrate that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Because what on paper might look like not a great achievement, it might have took everything they've got to get to that. So
Mhm.
I certainly understand that. And all of your links will be included in the description as well. For,
It has been just a real treat to meet you. I feel like I have a new friend for the future. I really appreciate you.
but we'll have that arranged in 5 minutes to come back on. So don't worry. Thank you. And it's just been great. So yeah, let's see what we can do. But it's been brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lee.